Your 30s are the most financially confusing decade you will live through. And the strange part is, it gets worse the more you earn. You are making more money than you were in your 20s, and somehow you still feel behind. The rent went up, the groceries went up. Everyone around you seems to be buying homes, having babies, taking trips, and looking like they have it figured out. And you are sitting there wondering where your paycheck actually goes because it disappears faster now than it ever did when you had less. That is not a coincidence. That is the 30s. This is the decade where your income finally starts to grow, and life gets more expensive at the exact same rate. Responsibilities stack up, expectations rise, family needs start showing up. Debt from your 20s does not disappear just because your salary grew. And every time you get a raise, it feels like the bills already knew about it before you did. So, if you feel stretched, confused, or quietly behind, you are not failing. You are just in the most financially competitive decade of your life without a clear plan for it. My name is Mila, and I'm obsessed with the small moves and hidden nuances that build real wealth. In this video, I am going to walk you through 7 money moves to make in your 30s, before life gets even more expensive than it already is. Because here's the thing, your 30s are not just about earning more. They are about protecting more of what you earn before life learns how to spend it. Let's get into it. Move 1. Stop letting comparison decide your spending. The first move has nothing to do with your bank account. It has everything to do with what you are using as a reference point for your life. In your 30s, comparison gets expensive. Your 30s are the first decade where everyone's path starts to look different. And that gap between where you are and where someone else appears to be is exactly where comparison gets dangerous. Suddenly, people around you are buying homes, renovating kitchens, financing cars, and posting vacations that cost more than your rent. And without realizing it, you start measuring your financial decisions against what you see other people doing. That is where the damage starts. Here is what you need to understand. What you see is not the full picture. The house might stretch them thin every single month. The car is probably financed. The trip might be sitting on a credit card right now. You are not looking at wealth. You are looking at spending, and spending can look identical to wealth from the outside. When you let other people's visible lifestyle set your financial pace, you stop making decisions based on your own goals. You upgrade because they upgraded. You go on the trip because everyone else is going. You feel behind because someone else looks ahead, even though you have no idea where they actually stand. Before any significant spending decision, ask yourself one honest question. Is this something I genuinely want, or is this something I want because I've been watching other people have it? That question will save you more money than any budget ever will. The people who quietly build wealth in their 30s are not the ones who out-earn everyone. They are the ones who stopped letting other people's highlight reels decide what their money should be doing. Move 2. Build a real emergency fund before life tests you. Your 30s are the decade where you finally have something to lose. This move is not glamorous. It is not about growing your money or building wealth in any exciting way. It is about making sure one bad month does not derail everything you are building. Because in your 30s, the stakes attached to your financial stability go up significantly. It is not just you anymore, it is your rent or your mortgage. It might be a partner, a child, aging parents, a car you depend on to get to work. An emergency in your 20s was inconvenient. An emergency in your 30s can be destabilizing, because more is attached to your ability to keep things running. And yet, most people in their 30s are still operating without a real cushion. Here is how to think about this. An emergency fund is not a savings goal. It is a shock absorber. Its job is not to grow. Its job is to make sure that when something goes wrong, and something will go wrong, you are not forced into debt to handle it, or pulling from investments, or making a panicked financial decision under pressure. because that is exactly how one bad month becomes 6 bad months. Start with a target of 1 month of essential expenses, not total spending, essential expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, minimum debt payments. That number is smaller than you think, and it is achievable faster than you think. Once you have 1 month, build toward 3, then eventually 3 to 6 months, depending on how much responsibility you are carrying. The practical move is simple. Open a separate account specifically for this fund, not your main account. Not an account you dip into when something catches your eye. A separate, untouched account. That exists for one purpose only. When it gets used, rebuilding it becomes the immediate next priority. Wealth building is not only about growth, it is also about protection. The emergency fund is what keeps one unexpected expense from setting you back months of progress. Build it before life reminds you that you needed it. Move 3. Stop making your future pay for your past. This one is going to require some honesty, pay it off, and then stop creating it. That is the whole move. But understanding why it is non-negotiable in your 30s specifically is what will actually make you do it. If you are carrying consumer debt into this decade, credit cards, car loans, personal loans, buy now, pay later balances, a portion of your income is already spoken for before you see it. In your 20s, you could get away with that. Your goals were smaller, your lifestyle was leaner, and nothing expensive was waiting on the other side of that balance. So it became background noise, a minimum payment you managed around rather than eliminated. And honestly, the decade let you. Your 30s do not. This is the decade where the goals get expensive. You want to buy a home. That requires a clean debt-to-income ratio and a credit profile that works in your favor. You want to start a family, build investments, create real financial cushion. Every one of those goals requires margin. You cannot qualify for the mortgage you want because your debt-to-income ratio is too high. You cannot invest consistently because too much of your income is already committed backward. You cannot build savings because minimum payments are occupying the space savings should. And what you do not fix in your 30s does not stay in your 30s. Carry this into your 40s, the decade where retirement becomes urgent, where children's education costs become real, where your parents may need support, and you are still paying for decisions made years earlier. The compounding that should be building your wealth ends up working against you in interest instead. So the move has 2 parts, get out and stay out. To get out, list every debt you are carrying. The balance, the interest rate, the minimum payment. All of it visible in one place. Then choose a method. The avalanche targets the highest interest rate first and saves the most money. The snowball targets the smallest balance first and builds momentum. Neither is wrong. The one you will stick to is the right one. What matters is that every debt has an end date. Not a minimum payment you manage forever, but an actual date it is gone. To stay out, stop using debt to close the gap between what you earn and what everything around you seems to cost. Because for a lot of people in their 30s, the debt is not just old baggage. It is being actively rebuilt. A trip here, a home upgrade there, a car that felt necessary. And the cycle continues. Consumer debt used to fund a lifestyle your income cannot yet support is one of the most expensive decisions you can make this decade. Not just financially, but in terms of the options, goals, and version of your 40s you are quietly building right now. Get out, stay out, move 4, capture your raises before lifestyle inflation does. The most dangerous financial moment in your 30s is not a crisis. It is a raise. Here is something most people do not know. Research consistently shows that your peak spending decade is not your 30s. It is your 40s and 50s. That is when the biggest bills land. Trade-up homes, children's education, aging parents, highest mortgage debt, peak lifestyle costs. Your 30s are not the expensive decade. They are the setup decade. The habits you build now, specifically what you do every time your income rises, determine whether you arrive in your 40s with wealth underneath you or debt waiting for you. That is why lifestyle inflation in your 30s is so specifically dangerous, because it does not just cost you now. It costs you at the exact moment your life becomes most expensive. And your 30s come loaded with very specific temptations that make this hard. Your income rises, and suddenly the apartment feels too small. So you upgrade or you stretch further on a property than you actually need to. The car that got you through your 20s starts feeling mismatched with where you are professionally. Dining out stops being a treat and becomes the default. Vacations shift from budget to boutique. The designer pieces start feeling earned. Weddings, babies, home furnishings, premium everything, because you finally feel like you can. And none of it feels reckless. Each decision feels completely proportionate to what you now earn. That is exactly what makes it dangerous. This is lifestyle inflation. And it works by making every raise disappear before it ever reaches your wealth. Your income climbs, your lifestyle climbs with it. The gap between the two, which is where wealth actually lives, never grows. And if that pattern becomes the habit of your 30s, you carry it straight into the decade where life becomes most expensive. The move is to make a decision about every raise before your lifestyle makes it for you. The moment income increases, a raise, a bonus, a new role, extra income, divide it with intention before it dissolves into your regular spending. A portion goes straight to investing. A portion goes to savings or rebuilding your emergency fund if needed. A portion goes to debt if you are still carrying any. And yes, a portion goes to your actual life. This is not about refusing to enjoy what you earn. It is about refusing to let every single increase get absorbed automatically. Because here's what happens when you do not. You spend your entire 30s watching your income climb and arrive in your 40s, at your peak spending decade, with a lifestyle that costs everything you earn and investments that barely exist. Your lifestyle can grow. It just cannot grow at the same rate as your income. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is not a sacrifice. It is where your future is being built. Quietly, consistently, and especially every single time a raise arrives and everything around you is suggesting you should spend it. Every raise is a choice. Make it before your 30s, make it for you. Move 5. Start investing before you feel fully ready. Every year you delay investing in your 30s is a year you will spend your 40s trying to replace. That is not a motivational line. That is just what compounding does when you give it time and what it cannot do when you do not. In your 20s, delaying investing was understandable. Income was inconsistent, stability was thin, and the margin simply was not there for most people. But your 30s change the equation. Income is rising. Stability is building. The margin is starting to exist. And yet, this is the decade where a completely different paralysis sets in. Not the paralysis of having nothing to invest, but the paralysis of feeling like you do not know enough to start. You want to understand it all first. Which account? Which fund? Which platform? How much? What if you pick wrong? What if the market drops? And so the research continues, the decision gets postponed, and another year passes without a single contribution made. Meanwhile, compounding, the single most powerful force in personal wealth building, is waiting. And it requires one thing above everything else: time. Your 30s are when time starts becoming a resource you can no longer take for granted. Take someone who invests $300 a month starting at 30. We are using 8% as the annual return. And to be clear, that is a conservative estimate. The historical long-term average of a broad market index fund sits closer to 10%. We are using 8% to account for fees, market variation, and real-world imperfection. The real number could be higher. The point stands either way. At 8%, by the time that person reaches 65, they have roughly $688,000. Now, take someone who starts the exact same habit at 40, same $300, same discipline, same 8%. By 65, they have roughly $285,000. That is a $403,000 difference from 1 decade of delay. And here's the part that makes it even sharper. The person who started at 30 only put in $36,000 more in total contributions, but they ended up with $403,000 more at retirement. That gap is not explained by effort. It is not explained by income. It is explained entirely by time. And time is the one thing you cannot buy back. And this is where most people in their 30s make the process harder than it needs to be. They hear investing and immediately think stock picking. Which company? Which sector? Which is about to grow? And so instead of starting simply, they end up in a spiral of research, comparison, and second-guessing that leads nowhere. The irony is that the most effective investing strategy for someone in their 30s is also the most boring one. And that is exactly why people overlook it. Index funds and ETFs, low-cost funds that track the entire market, rather than betting on individual companies. You are not picking winners, you are owning a small piece of everything. When the market grows over time, and historically over long periods, it does, you grow with it. No stock analysis required. No watching ticker symbols. No expertise needed before you begin. The practical starting point is straightforward. If your employer offers a 401k match, start there. That match is the closest thing to free money that exists in personal finance, and not taking it is one of the most expensive decisions you can make in this decade. After that, a Roth IRA gives your money decades to grow completely tax-free, meaning you pay no tax on withdrawals at retirement. These are not complicated products. They are just accounts. What you put inside them, low-cost index funds and ETFs, is what does the actual work. And this connects directly to what we already established. Your 40s are your peak spending decade, mortgage at its highest, children's costs rising, parents potentially needing support. If you arrive in your 40s without investments already working quietly in the background, you are trying to build wealth in the most expensive decade of your life, with no runway behind you. The window was open for a full decade. You just never stepped through it. So the move is simple. Automate the contribution, set it once, let it move before you have the chance to redirect it somewhere else. A modest amount invested every month for a decade will outperform a large amount invested occasionally with no discipline. Every time. Because compounding does not reward knowledge. It does not reward intensity. It rewards time and consistency. And your 30s are exactly when both of those are still on your side. The goal in your 30s is not to look sophisticated. It is to become consistent. Start before you feel ready, because ready is a feeling. And compounding does not wait for feelings. Move 6. Simplify your financial life before it gets too complicated. Now, if you are in your 30s, you probably know more about personal finance than you did in your 20s. The videos, the books, the podcasts, the knowledge is there. The organization is not. And that gap between knowing and actually doing is exactly what this move is about. Because a financial life you cannot see clearly is a financial life you cannot manage. And the cost of that does not show up today. It shows up in your 40s when life is at its most expensive, and you are trying to make serious financial decisions on top of a foundation that was never properly built. So let us actually go through it. 3 areas: your accounts, your budget, and your habits. Starting with your accounts. Go through every account you have open right now. Savings accounts, checking accounts, old 401ks from jobs you left, investment accounts you opened once and never looked at again. If you have retirement money sitting idle in a former employer's plan, consolidate it. That money is not working for you. Sitting forgotten in an account you never check. Separate your emergency fund from your everyday spending completely. Different account, different bank if necessary. The emergency fund only works if it is untouchable. If it is sitting next to your spending money, it will get spent. Every account you keep open should have one clear job. If you cannot name what an account is for, close it or give it a purpose. Now, your budget. Some of you have not looked at a budget in years. Some of you have never had one at all. Both of those are the same problem. You do not have a clear picture of where your money actually goes every month. A budget is not a punishment. It is information. And without that information, you are making financial decisions in the dark, wondering why your paycheck disappears, wondering why saving feels impossible, wondering why the numbers never quite add up. Your budget needs to reflect how you actually live, not how you wish you spent. Your real groceries, your real dining out, your real subscriptions, your real everything. A budget built on wishful thinking will fail every single month and make you feel worse than having no budget at all. Build it once, review it monthly, adjust it when life changes, and finally, your habits. This is the part that requires the most honesty. Having organized accounts and a budget means nothing if you are still not actually looking at your finances regularly. And this is where a lot of people in their 30s need a direct conversation with themselves. Check your account balance regularly, a few times a week at minimum. Daily is better. This is not obsessive. This is basic adult financial awareness. You cannot manage what you refuse to look at. Set a weekly money meeting with yourself. 20 minutes. What came in? What went out? What is sitting in savings? Where the investments stand? 20 minutes a week is what keeps your financial life visible and your decisions intentional rather than reactive. Automate everything you can. Savings transfer on payday. Investment contribution on payday. Bills on autopay. The less your financial system depends on you remembering to act manually, the more consistently it runs, regardless of how busy life gets. Your 30s are when financial adulthood actually begins. Not the age, the behavior. And behavior requires showing up consistently, not occasionally, not in a panic when something goes wrong, but deliberately and repeatedly as a non-negotiable habit. Simple, organized, consistent. That is the move. Move 7. Build wealth without missing your actual life. You have just been through 6 moves, all about protection, discipline, and building forward. And if you've been watching this video thinking, this all sounds like a very organized, very restricted, very joyless existence, this move is the answer to that. Because somewhere in the conversation about financial discipline, people get the idea that building wealth means saying no to life. And that is not what any of this is for. But here is what makes this move different from just saying, enjoy your money. This is not permission to spend carelessly. This is something more specific and more urgent than that. Your 30s are a threshold. For many of you watching this is the last decade before the heaviest responsibilities land fully. Maybe you do not have children yet, or your children are still young and some of your freedom still exists. Maybe your parents are still independent. Maybe you are still at a point where a spontaneous decision is possible, where a trip, an experience, a meaningful moment does not require 6 months of logistics. That window is real, and it is narrower than you think. The people who spend their entire 30s in pure austerity mode, deferring every experience, saying no to everything, telling themselves they will live properly once the number is right, often arrive in their 40s financially organized and personally hollow. They saved the future. They forgot the present. And some of the experiences they were saving for are no longer available in the same way. The friendships shifted. The energy changed. The window closed quietly while they were waiting for permission to enjoy their own life. That is not wealth. That is just a different kind of poverty. But here is the other side of that truth. The people who spend their 30s living entirely for the moment, every raise absorbed, every experience funded on credit, every financial decision made in service of today, arrive in their 40s with memories and nothing underneath them. No investments working in the background, no cushion absorbing the shocks, no margin between what life costs and what they earn. And by then, the compounding they should have started in their 30s is a decade behind. Both of those outcomes are avoidable, and avoiding them requires one thing: the difference between intentional spending and performative spending. Performative spending is what you do when you are trying to feel successful, keep up with what everyone else seems to be doing, or fill a gap that money cannot actually fill. It looks like living well from the outside. It does not feel like much from the inside. And it is expensive to maintain indefinitely. Intentional spending is different. It starts with a genuine question. What actually adds meaning to my life when I am living it, not photographing it? The answer is different for everyone. For some, it is travel. For some, it is food and experiences. For some, it is quality time, health, creativity, family. Whatever it is for you, spend on that without guilt. Cut harder from everything else. Because when you get honest about what genuinely matters to you versus what you have just been funding out of habit or social pressure, you will find that your real life, the one that actually satisfies you, is far more affordable than the performed version of it. That is the move, not deprivation, not recklessness, intention. Protect your future self with everything the previous 6 moves built, and protect your present self by deciding clearly and deliberately what your life actually needs to feel full right now. Both of those people deserve to be taken care of. The version of you building towards stability, and the version of you living in your 30s right now, at the last threshold before everything gets heavier. You do not have to choose between building wealth and having a life. You just have to stop funding a life you do not actually want in order to afford both. So, now that we've gone through all 7, let us talk about what you actually do with this, because information without action is just entertainment. And this was never meant to be entertainment. One action per move. Not everything today, just the next right step for where you are right now. Move 1. Identify one area of your spending that is being driven by comparison rather than genuine desire. Name it. Then decide deliberately whether it stays or goes. Move 2. Calculate 1 month of your essential expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, minimum debt payments. That is your first emergency fund target. Open a separate account this week and name it. That name makes it real. Move 3. List every consumer debt you are carrying right now. The balance, the interest rate, the minimum payment. All of it visible in one place. Then choose your method, avalanche or snowball, and give every debt an end date. Move 4. Decide right now where your next raise or income increase will go before it arrives. The split does not have to be perfect. It just has to exist before the money does. Move 5. If you do not have a retirement account open, open one this week. If you have a 401k with an employer match you are not taking, fix that first. Then automate a contribution. Small and consistent beats large and occasional every time. Move 6. Spend 20 minutes this week going through every account you have open. Consolidate what is idle. Separate your emergency fund. Then build or rebuild a budget that reflects how you actually live right now, not how you plan to live. How you actually live. Move 7. Name one category of spending that genuinely adds meaning to your life. Protect it. Then identify one category that is purely performative. Cut it. 7 moves. 7 first steps. None of them require perfection. All of them require a decision. Let me bring this full circle. In your 20s, you were figuring it out. Nobody had a system. Nobody was expected to. The mistakes, the inconsistency, the lack of structure. That was the decade for all of that. And it is behind you now. Your 30s are different. This is not the figuring out decade. This is the building decade. And the quiet truth most people do not realize until it is behind them is that this decade, right now, wherever you are in it, is the one that actually decides everything. Not your 40s, not later, now. Because by your 40s, life is at its most expensive and most demanding. Mortgage at its highest. Children's costs rising. Parents who were once independent may no longer be. Retirement no longer feels distant. It feels urgent. The people who arrive in that decade with investments running, debt cleared, and a financial system that works do not feel that pressure the same way. They have options. They have breathing room. That foundation was built quietly and imperfectly in their 30s. Everyone else arrives at the most expensive decade of their life, starting from scratch. And retirement is not a distant abstract concept. It is the actual version of your life, waiting on the other side of the decisions you're making right now. That version of you is either going to have freedom and options or constraints built from a decade of financial drift when the window was still open. Your 30s may feel stretched and expensive, but stretched is not behind. And feeling like everyone else has it figured out is almost never an accurate picture of reality. What you do in this decade, quietly, imperfectly, repeatedly, is the reason your future life either has options or does not. That is what these 7 moves are for. If this video helped you see your 30s differently, or gave you even one move you are going to act on, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time. We talk about the small moves and hidden nuances that build real wealth. And there is a lot more coming. And always remember, luxury is easier when your money is organized. I will see you in the next one. I love you.